All right, here we go for this week's We As Start Talking Live. We're just going to go ahead. We're waiting for Gareth Knock, host of We As Difference Makers Start Talking, and as soon as he joins the conversation, we'll get going. There we go. All right, there's Jimmy. Hi, Gareth Knock. Whoa. All right, and there he is.
What's up?
Hey, bud.
What's going on?
Holy shit, you're cleanly shaven.
Yeah, you know, we're
You look,
sharp.
yeah, dude. What's the occasion?
Just I didn't want to turn up for our date, with a load of stubble.
Well, it does chafe, so I appreciate that. um, so we've got a lot to cover this week,
Oh yeah,
and you and I chatted a few minutes ago, and I think we actually just discovered a new. So it's the June 5, um, but I think we may have actually added another another point that we want to discuss, and it was based on my confession. um, do you want to start? Do you want to get into it? And go ahead, bud. Bring us up
yeah.
to speed on what the fuck we're doing here.
All right. So we currently have our June 5 challenge, which we put out on Monday this week. And let's be clear for anyone that's hey Aaliyah, for anyone that's listening in, right now live or listening through this video in the future, is jump on board now. Like, it's not you have to do this for every day in June. It's a challenge to choose, and how we put it was it's a challenge to choose 5 things, 5 habits that make you the best version of yourself. It wasn't you have to do this for all 30 days, although we had discussed that. It wasn't to stick to these things 100% every single day and tick every box. It was just to get out there, choose 5 things, and start to integrate these habits into your life. And by integrating these things into your life, it's going to make you show up as a better version of yourself, whatever that looks like and whatever those habits look like. So that was kind of what we put out there. It was a challenge to post on social media for accountability, to share your stories, to tag us in those stories, and just build that community and that accountability among the masses, and it all started from a conversation we had on a walk one morning. So, when we spoke about this, it was all about, just that accountability, and it was you and me, not you, me, and everyone else.
Yeah.
So, but it kind of spread into that, and I'm glad it did, and I'm glad we found out some things early on already in this challenge, which you might want to share.
Well, before I do that, one of the things that I find most amazing about our early morning walks and our early morning conversations, and just so for those that are tuning in, either for the first time or if you've tolerated our Instagram live in the past, Gareth and I would like to say every day of the week. Gareth is much more regimented than I am, and I've got some sleep issues and a whole slurry of excuses. But oftentimes Gareth and I will get up at 5 a.m. and we'll start walking, not start talking, but start walking at 5:30 in the morning, and we'll spend 2 hours on the phone together. And we often go through these very cathartic experiences with each other that, Gareth, as you just said, which beautifully put, in the moment, they are very much just for you and I. Nobody else is privy to those experiences because nobody else in their right mind is normally up walking 10K at 5:30 in the morning. But what I find so amazing is how we manifest many of the very individual conversations that we have with one another, how we manifest those conversations into a much more macro applicable reference. And it's like you and I have this, we have this appetite to connect with one another, A, because yes, we love connecting with one another, but B, because we know that we're mining each other for gold. And I mine you and you mine me, and we exchange thoughts and opinions and points of view. And 9 times out of 10, much of the content on these Instagram live videos, much of that content is a derivative of subject matter that we've covered in our early morning walks. So, you know, credit to you for acknowledging that, and credit to you for being patient enough to have, 2 hours of conversation with me.
Yeah, and just to follow that as well, acknowledge anyone that's jumping on. I see a few people that have jumped on that are participating in the challenge too, which is awesome. And and a lot of the things that came up in our conversation this week that we're going to talk about, as a result of that. So, a result of the challenge and kind of looking at what we're doing and our habits, etc.
And now for my confession.
Yeah.
So part of my June 5, and I won't go through all of them, but one of my June 5 goals was similar to the challenge that I issued for myself in January, was to have no alcohol through the month of June. As it turns out, our son is up at a cottage for the weekend. And before anybody says anything disparaging with regards to self-isolation and quarantine, he's at a cottage with a family. They are our neighbors. They are 2 of our closest friends. They have been completely self-isolating. They have not seen the light of day in 2 fucking months. So I'm completely confident, although that may sound naive, I'm completely confident in sending our son to the cottage for the weekend. But the point is, and there's the note that I have here, is goals can be elastic. And one of the goals that I had set forth in the June 5 was no alcohol. But now I've got a completely unforeseen opportunity to spend a night with my wife, my life partner, my spouse, whatever you want to call her, or just call her Jen. And we can have a night together sitting on our deck, and we can enjoy a bottle of wine, and we can light some candles, and we can have a nice meal, and we can participate in a moment that did not previously exist. And let's be clear, for 2.5 months, for our own mental health, the elasticity of that goal, of my goal, became essential. For the health of my relationship with my partner, it was important to me that we connect throughout tonight and enjoy sitting on the deck with some candles while our son's away. So the point is, goals can be elastic, and you cannot punish yourself for the elasticity of goals. You have to be able to just simply take that moment, accept it, enjoy it, embrace it. Tomorrow's a new day, or perhaps there's an entirely new goal awaiting us. But goals are elastic, and oftentimes we bludgeon ourselves for how strict our goals are and our adherence to that specific goal. And it becomes completely derailing for the perpetuation of any other goal that we have in our life. So, Gareth, you started this IG Live by quasi calling me out. There's my truth. I am enjoying a bottle of wine with my wife tonight.
Yeah, for sure. And I think everything you said should land as a result. It's not a challenge to not drink alcohol for a month. It's a challenge to be the best version of yourself, or be a better version of yourself. And exactly like you said, being a better version of yourself is seizing this opportunity, is being a better husband, is being, a better partner, whatever it is, whatever situation that, you, I, or anyone else is in. It's about being your best version. And here's the thing: you're not your best version when you have a hiccup in anything. Your training, your nutrition, your alcohol consumption, your challenge that you're doing, whatever it is, anything in life. When we have a hiccup, if I have a hiccup and I eat, not that this is one of mine at all, but just as an example, if I have a hiccup and I have ice cream and I've told myself I'm not going to eat ice cream, then I'm the kind of personality where tomorrow I'm eating 2 tubs and then I'm eating another tub and another tub, and it's a month down the line and I'm eating a tub of ice cream every day because I failed on the journey. So exactly like you touched on, it's about finding that space to say, hey, yeah, I'm going to enjoy this, but this is still something I'm committed to, and tomorrow's another day, and I'm just going to continue. I'm not going to beat myself up about it.
Yeah.
And that's what the challenge is about: beating yourself up about it and self-deprecating, and then creating a negative habit as a result of it is not being the best version of yourself. So I think this is a massive lesson, like 4 days in, and I'm sure we'll document a load more, but I thought that was a really good place to start.
So a little bit of housekeeping. And I know that in your post, you had identified rapid fire. So what the fuck does that mean? So Gareth and I are going to try something which we are not naturally gifted at.
Hence the 2-hour walk conversations.
Yeah. Let's be, I'm trying to read how do you manage reading comments when you feel you have goals? Yes. Yeah. God, Aaliyah was on last week too, and she had some absolute pearls of wisdom. So thank you for that. You and I can often spend an hour and a half walking 10K and talk about one thing. But what we had suggested for this week is that we would do a rapid fire. And what that means is we are going to allow ourselves 2 minutes. And I have a rogue iPhone. I've got the stopwatch ready. We're going to give ourselves 2 minutes to talk about the next 5 subjects. So Gareth, when you're ready, we will start, and I will be, as I expect you to be, militant about the 2 minutes. Okay. You are going to open up with talking about imposter syndrome. So when you're ready, I will press start, and you have 2 minutes to speak, sir.
Jeez.
This
is going to be a bigger challenge.
3, 2, 1, go.
All right. So imposter syndrome is the one we decided to open with. And let me just read. I want to make sure I get this right. Imposter syndrome, the definition is a pattern of doubting one's accomplishments and the fear of being exposed. So that's the definition of imposter syndrome, in case anyone was wondering. And this is something I spoke about a lot. I just did an episode about it recently on the podcast, and it's something that cripples a lot of people, in that if you're not the best at something, you're not the oracle of information, that you don't have the right to show up and share. A bit like doing this IG live and talking about things that we just have in random conversations and other people talk about, and we maybe talk about on our social media, but we're not experts in any of these things. But we're brave enough to show up and share that stuff. And it leads me to one of my favorite quotes that Carl will dig me for. But you don't have to be great to start. And if you want to be great at something, you have to make that start point. You have to decide to do something. You have to decide to be better. Part of this challenge is being better. And if you don't show up and you can't express that, in any way, shape, or form, and or show up to a platform where you don't feel confident that you know a lot about it. I don't know a lot about, habits and goals, but you have to start that journey and enjoying the journey. Carl touched on this. Even this challenge is about a journey. So embracing the journey and saying that I'm going to be great when I get started and I move. I'm a 20-year veteran of the fitness industry. I was fucking horrible at it when I started, horrible. And if I look back now at it, I probably would never have done it and started. So, but I didn't get to where I am by not starting. So, and it's hard, and we all have those issues when we show up, but what I wanted to make a real clear point on is that you have to get moving on something. If you want to make a difference, you want to make a change, you want to, start a podcast, you want to change a career, whatever it is, you're
Stop.
going to have to start. You're going to have to start. Good finish. So there you go. That wasn't too bad, actually. Maybe should have made it 60 seconds.
Okay, so we have the honor system that you must believe that I am timing myself. And let's be clear, the purpose of the sort of rapid fire is not that we are retorting against one another. I am not dispelling any of Gareth's points of view or opinions. I agree and adore everything he just said. We are simply trying to construct a conversation that is dissimilar from many of the IG lives we've done in the past and all of the conversations we have at 5 o'clock in the morning. And we're trying to get a lot of subject matter covered in a short period of time. So my 2 minutes, 3, 2, 1. What I had said to you when we were walking on Tuesday morning, I was trying to dissect imposter syndrome, and what you and I have talked a lot about is when somebody has ascended, typically by virtue of their job, when somebody has ascended to a certain vocation, the imposter syndrome plagues them because they don't believe they deserve to be there. Despite all of their pedigree, despite all of their hard work, their self-worth betrays their ascension into that particular role, or in the case of a relationship, or even a thought track, or an emotional point of view. We sabotage we sabotage our self-worth, and it's infected by this imposter syndrome. What I had said to you was, what if it works the other way? What if there are people that are filled with hate and despair and loathing and fear and sadness? And what if, in fact, the people that are living in that space of hate, loathing, despair, and sadness, what if, in fact, they are imposters within that feeling of negativity, hate, self-loathing, and I forget all the adjectives I use because now I'm looking at the clock. But the imposter syndrome works both ways. The imposter syndrome can affect a descension as well as an ascension. So look at where you are. If you are in a negative point, and fuck. Okay. I hope that resonated. I can't say anything more.
Yep.
Imposter syndrome.
So true, and such an interesting contrast, and that's what we kind of wanted to bring. We clearly didn't do that in 4 minutes the other day, but that was the contrast we were going for, absolutely. So I hope that landed, and it would have resonated one or two ways. And maybe when you look at the world and society, you'll see how those two things come together from both sides of the coin. Yeah.
I'm stealing time right now, but if you're in a shitty place in life, and if you are in a shitty place in life, you know that you're in a shitty place in life, maybe you're an imposter. Maybe you're meant to be in a great place in life. And the conversation, Gareth, was people that are in a great place in life feel as though they are imposters and feel they deserve a shitty place in life. But flip it. And all too few of us actually articulate this conversation. Flip it. If you're in a shitty place in life, whether by virtue, by circumstance, or by your just sheer fucking beliefs, if you're in a shitty place in life, you're an imposter. Possibly, you're an imposter. And flip it, because maybe you're meant to be a great fucking person. Wow, I stole way. So I now forgive you if you want an extra minute.
Yeah. No, I just think, I think it is. I see it as it's like a, it's like a scale or a matrix. I think this is the best way to wrap it up is we've got right in the middle of those two things is, is starting. So if you're in a shitty place and you need to be better, you have to start. And that's it. And that's kind of that flip, right? Or you could be the other side of it. So I think it kind of brings everything together. You've got the either end of the spectrum and then starting that journey of, you know, better self-belief and, moving away from fear or starting that journey to become a better person. If you're in a bad place, it all comes back to that. I guess it's not a scale. It's like the nucleus of it. Starting's the nucleus. So absolutely. Um, and yeah, so we go into another one we got here. Let me see what Leah says. If you have a pessimistic view, you will believe there is nothing you can do or change. These people also turn minor complications into major catastrophes. Don't convince yourself. Yes. Yes. Oh my God, Leah, our conversation the other morning went to that, exactly that, about the catastrophizers and the need for seeing the negative side of things. I think we're talking kind of about the same thing, like that pessimistic view, right? If you're pessimistic on everything, you'll find things to complain about and you'll choose to be in that headspace, in that pattern and stay on that trajectory rather than flipping to the opposite. So, yeah.
Or, and as we agreed upon the other morning, or your teachings have led you to be catastrophic.
Yep.
Your teachings surround yourself. You have been surrounded by people or environment that take you to that place.
Yeah.
And I caution the use of the word choose, because choices are really slippery, and choices are also a really convenient part of our lexicon that people that are of no mental health issues, with moderate income, with no real adversity based on color, creed, religion, sexual preference. We need to be careful with the use of the word choice, because oftentimes what we choose is a luxury. It's something that, Gareth, you and I, and let's, to the people tuning in and to all those that are going to watch this later, you and I have the power of choice. That's a luxury for us, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. Awesome point. What did Rob say? Sometimes I collapse my successes with my goals, and nothing I've done will ever match up against my goals. Kind of puts shade on the good stuff. But now, I hear you loud and clear. Absolutely, we do that for sure, and we have to.
What does Rob mean by saying I'm not mindful? Or if I'm not mindful, what does that mean?
Yeah. I think it means it can be, what can happen is it puts shade on all the good stuff if he's not being mindful of that, right? Like the successes and all the things that you've done that are great aren't necessarily linked to that other goal that you're working towards, right? It's like chasing what's the analogy? I'll remember it. It will come to me. Like destination addiction, basically, right? Like we're always looking for the next thing. We're addicted to that next thing rather than embracing that journey where we spoke about, right? And you embrace the journey, you see the little successes and the little wins. It's not that I didn't make it to whatever it is, because there's always going to be something else. It's like the old joke that we joke about: when you start lifting weights, it's the day you'll never be big enough. Like it just, because I poke fun at that, but it's so true. Like you have to see those successes through the journey, and you have to be mindful of that, because if you don't, then you slip into that pessimistic headspace. That's how I read it.
And I think, as Rob's just confirmed, I think you're probably right. I would say there's probably a much deeper conversation about understanding what the fuck success actually means. The reference, and Gareth, you and I have talked a lot about this over the years. Anytime I hear a reference to success, my default is, okay, what is success? And Gareth, you've taught me a lot over the past couple of years, how to how to be at peace with the fact that success is extremely gray. And
I think we sorry to interrupt you. I think we learned that together.
how dare you?
Just so give you the credit there. And anyway, look, what success is not on my notes, so we're not talking about it. All right, next
Okay,
topic.
let's move on. So the next
All right, you are going to open with 2 minutes on social dexterity.
hang on. Success equals behavior divided by intention. Behavior divided by intention.
Oh, now you got him going.
Yeah, sorry, I can't accept that, bro. I can't accept that. It is not behavior divided by intention. I mean, first of all, anytime you divide something, you're bastardizing your own self-worth. Let's start with that. Intention. Okay, you know what you know what? DM me and we'll have this chat. In fact, how about come on the podcast? We as Difference Makers, hosted by Gareth Knock. We as Men, hosted by Carl Anthony, or We as Dads, hosted by Scott Kelly, and soon to launch We as Women, coming down the pipeline.
So maybe 2 weeks. Maybe 2 weeks today we can discuss what is success on the IG Live. Booyah!
Okay.
All
right. I'm down with that.
Okay, you got. All right. Cut. Listen. Social dexterity. 2 minutes. Hit the timer. Let's go.
3, 2, 1. So you and I had talked about social dexterity, and truth be told, because this is a forum of complete transparency, I had actually referred to it as social schizophrenia. And you and I both agreed that was not something that, a term that you and I could use because it's not neither socially acceptable, nor do we have a couple of PhDs to understand what that term actually means. So we called it social dexterity. And effectively, what we talked about is how we walk through our lives. And I'm talking about sort of high functioning, moderately functioning people. We walk through our lives, and there are facets of our lives, whether they are our partners, our coworkers, our friends, our children, perhaps even ourselves. There are these sects of our lives where we interact with different versions of our lives, and we present different versions of our personalities. So what I wanted to try to understand is, how do we maintain the core of who we are, the core of a we as, not a they as, but the core of a we as person who is contributing to the growth and wealth and overall well-being of humanity? How do we maintain the core of who we are while also coveting the fact we are different with the different, I'm going to say, categories of people that we interact with? So this is, how do we grow the muscle that is the social dexterity of who we are and how we show up and the story we tell ourselves based on the dexterous version of itself. Booyaka. 2 minutes, 0.77.
You got 0.77 over.
Okay.
All right. Wow. Jeez, that was a lot. I'm gonna let everyone digest that for a second. So I think that's definitely where we went with the topic. So what I've been thinking about this a lot, and I wanted Carl to start with that because I knew that's where we were going to go with it, and it gives a kind of clarity to the conversation, you know, in a snapshot. So here's my thoughts on it. Get ready with the timer.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, so social dexterity. How do we build that? I think you said, how do we build that muscle in which to continue to be the authentic version of ourselves? But we are definitely gonna approach. We're gonna show up the same, but we're gonna approach different interactions in different ways. And I don't believe that's not being unauthentic. You can still be authentic within that. What you have to do is you have to read the room and you have to understand communication on a level where you can show up authentically, you can keep your values and your beliefs front of mind, but you can communicate that in such a way. So the example, let me give you an example. The 2 hour conversation that me and Carl have when we're out on a walk is very, very different from the conversation I have with my wife, because she'll say to me, "Oh, you speak to Carl this morning, what did you talk about?" If I went into that conversation in the detail that we had it, she'd listen for 3.2 minutes and she'd be done. So what I have to do is say, here's the snapshot. Oh, this is what we spoke about, da da da, and then give her a little bit of a feed. She'll kind of interact a little bit, and then within 2 or 3 minutes, the conversation's over. But I've been able to portray the information to her, communicate it to her. So that's a massive part of it. You have to read the room. If I'm showing up to acquaintances, I'm gonna very, very much deliver something on as a easy to understand communication level for a multitude of people in front of me. If it's people I'm acquainted to, people I work with, people whoever, people I don't know that well. And then how I speak to my closest friends is very different based on how they like to communicate and how I like to communicate, and finding a middle ground. Like, we like to talk a lot, so we talk a lot. A lot of people don't. So you have to figure out, and I think it's reading the room, reading the people in front of you. But whatever you do, you're going to be bothered about what people think. And we spoke about this before as well on another live. We should be worried about what people think, but it shouldn't change our trajectory. I'm done.
How did you time that so perfectly?
Because I'm a genius. Ooh, didn't even need the other 2 seconds.
You know what's funny though? Since you and I had that chat, I've actually come to understand social dexterity in a different light.
Mm.
It's not about what's outward. It's about what's inward. Our social dexterity, that's something that I digress. Do you remember back in the day, I used to call you hero?
Yeah.
Do you remember why I called you hero?
Probably because I did something ridiculous.
Well, you did the splits. You did the splits on a stage in front of 50 people while teaching a class. And I called you my hero. And for 2 or 3 years, that's what I called you. Now, that's a literal reference to dexterity or flexibility. But one of the things that you have done a great job of, me less so, but you've done a great job of creating a more dexterous version of you socially. So it's not about, or maybe it is, but for this, what I've been thinking about is, it's not about what you project, because a projection is plausibly fake. What it's really about is being more interpersonally, socially dexterous in understanding what versions of you that currently exist can you contribute to making a moment better, versus what we're talking about, which is you kind of appease the masses. And that's when we had the conversation the other day, that was the origin, was that we project the story we tell ourselves is what we project to other people when we're in different social circumstances. And that's our social dexterity. But I think it's much deeper than that. I think it's much more about who we are, and the story we are actually telling ourselves is much more important to be socially dexterous within the story we're telling ourselves versus how we show up.
Yeah, I love it.
Makes sense?
Great. Yeah, man. Not very much else to say apart from that.
Oh my God.
Love it.
So thank you, Ben.
Yeah, welcome.
I had asked my wife, quick sidebar, I had asked my wife at the 30-minute mark, can you do me a favor and deliver me a double espresso? Double espresso. God.
You don't deserve it. As a joke. I
But
love
you're
you.
not.
As does she.
I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, part of me wants to say you're not wrong, but the other part of me wants to argue. But no, I think I do. I think I do.
You 100% do. As does
This,
she deserve you.
let's move on. Okay, so the next I've reset the stopwatch.
All right.
highlight reel versus real life. So this was something that and you and I have talked about this a lot over the past couple of years, but most notably last week on our walk, and you had broached the subject of highlight reel versus real life. So 3, 2, 1, go.
So highlight reel versus real life. Now, I think this is probably most poignant when we talk about social media, or many forms of media, but specifically social media because it's very much individual for the most part. And it's about and I think it's so heavily linked. And I think what basically happened is we spoke about imposter syndrome and then we got onto this subject because when we think about those imposter syndrome moments where we doubt our self-worth and that we're going to get found out to be an imposter, so we start to show up a little bit differently based on what other people are doing. What right do I have to to talk about this, to show myself and who I am, because someone will judge me or whatever it might be. So what we do is we filter what we show. So let's say we filter our lives, just to keep it generic, through social media channels, or even through into personal relationships, face to face. We do this too. We filter what real life is. Sometimes we're scared to talk about the things that we're struggling with. Sometimes we're scared to be vulnerable and have those conversations. And 100% transparently, hands up, that's me. But you have to develop, like you mentioned, that growth, and as you grow as a person, you develop better social dexterity, and you're able to communicate, and you're able to bring those things to situations, and you're able to read situations better, and you can show up around maybe people you don't feel as comfortable with that true version of you. So when we talk about the highlight reel, it's about bringing real life and showing all aspects of that, not just here's all the amazing things that I am and that I do, and I'm going to show you all these things because it's going to put me out there in the best light. Well, you attract more. Now, when I'm saying you want to attract more, because you either want to attract more people, more belonging, more community, or you want to attract more followers or more people to your business, or whatever it is, you want to attract more, and you do that better when you're authentic and you bring your real life forward. So when you can be vulnerable and you can talk about your struggles, and when you open up, it draws more in. Done. I got my point in just.
So I'll start the timer. Since we talked, because I don't need 2 minutes. Since we talked about that the other day, I've thought a lot about it, and very interpersonal thoughts. So here's a little cross section into the depravity and lack of self-worth in my mind. The thought that occurred to me was, how many people are combating the highlight reel of their own lives? And Gareth, when you and I first chatted about this, we were talking about how the infection of social media sort of propagation and the people that we watch and follow and view on social media, we really only see the highlight reel of their lives, and then we measure ourselves against those people. But I would submit that for myself, and my guess would be many other people, we all have our own highlight reel. And that is what we are trying to live against. That is what we measure ourselves against. And maybe it's a relationship memory or a childhood memory or an income memory or even a physique memory. You cannot live your life based on any fucking highlight reel, whether it is your own or anyone else's. Stop. I went over.
You brought some absolutely amazing points to that topic. Love it. What I will say is, and you're going to hate this, but you have to accept it. You don't have to, but you're going to. Is that right there is being in the present.
In the
After
what?
you said, after you said the other week, fuck that, the present doesn't exist.
Okay, here we go. But the present doesn't exist. The moment
right.
you acknowledge it's the present, it's the past. Okay,
True.
but
True.
I get
But
your.
but my point was, you don't truly know that that's that present moment until you're reflecting back on it. So that, to my point, you're reflecting back on being in that moment. But
Yes.
what you're saying is, it's not about where you've been and it's not about where you're going. It's about what you are now. That was what I took from your 2 minute to summarize it, which is about being in the present. You're not comparing to your highlight reel of the past or all these things you think you're going to become, or these things, the end destination. You need to be in the journey. You need to be in the present, and that's what you're saying. And I know you hate that because it doesn't exist. But it whatever you refer to it as, whether you refer to it the present or not, it's about that. It's about being right here now, not out here.
You're right, and fuck you. But I can also acknowledge that I'm capable of having an opinion about things that may not exist. And I would say, and this is a real quick sidebar because I don't want to get too derailed, but I would say men are much more prone to trying to live out a life based on a highlight reel. And typically a highlight reel that was once upon a time their life.
Yep.
In college and university, when they were banging everybody or had lots of money or were had six-pack abs and shredded, men oftentimes get stuck in trying to relive a highlight reel. And I would say there's no place for growth if you're constantly living in a highlight reel, whether it is your own or a fabrication of something that we through social media.
Yep.
Moving on.
100%. All right. Next up, Mr. Carl Anthony, you have 2 minutes on diluting reality.
Oh boy. So a quick disclaimer, when you and I, and my clock's not ticking, by the way, but when you and I talked about this the other night, or the other morning, sorry, I was pretty darn sure I knew the point I was trying to make. I'm not that sure right now, but I'll go. 3, 2, 1. Diluting reality. It may be easier to understand if those that are tuning in think about your children. And one of the common themes with our children, specifically regarding video games, is that they are being desensitized because of the shooting and the gunplay and the war, that they are being desensitized to the brutality of death and carnage. And we often vilify video games as they pertain to our children. But yet, we as adults, we are doing the exact same thing. We are allowing ourselves to dilute reality, our reality, by choice. And let's be very fucking clear. We only dilute the things that we choose to dilute. If you are financially stressed, you don't dilute that. You are constantly aware that you are financially stressed. If you are going through a marital issue, you don't dilute that. You are constantly aware you are going through a marital issue. We choose to dilute the things that are convenient for us. We are not dissimilar from our children as they, fuck, I'm watching the clock. We dilute the reality that we live in because it's convenient for us, because it's more palpable. It's easier for us to manage. It is easier for us to get out of bed each and every morning if we dilute the very things that cause us to be in pain. Stop. 20412. Fuck. We dilute reality, brother. And I'm going on, but we have to stop. And given what's going on in our world right now, we have to stop diluting our reality so that it becomes easier to swallow.
Yep.
What we ingest emotionally should be painful, paralyzing, and difficult. It should challenge us. It should cause us to lose sleep. It should cause us to start talking. It should cause us to question the very values on which we create this pedestal of our own existentialism. But it's not. And we have to stop fucking diluting it to the point where we can swallow it like a fucking Advil. It shouldn't be that easy. Good. Thank you, Gareth, for allowing me that. Don't fucking dilute reality, because there's some horrible shit going on in this world. And it's got to mean something. It's got to mean something. Because if it doesn't mean something to us, it won't mean anything to anyone. And that's not good enough.
How do I follow that? How do I follow that? First of all, 100%. Everything you say is spot on, and here's the thing that was definitely not the conversation we had 2 days ago. So I want to be clear about that, because we brought that up based on many things around the conversation we had, but and the reason, you know, and I'm talking for you now, but the reason I feel like your response is that because you've had time to take that and digest it, and maybe the root of it was something else, and that root of that kind of comes up a bit more raw now. But it is so true, and here's the thing: is the reason why we get paralyzed, and I don't need 2 minutes right now, whatever. The reason why we get the reason why we get paralyzed, and the reason we dilute reality, and we choose to do that in life, I'm going to say it could be however you want to take it. It's because we get paralyzed by the enormity. And it's exactly like you said, we're saying the same thing. You can't swallow it. It's uncomfortable, so you dilute it down. We do that because of the enormity of something. I'm going to go back to what we first spoke about, which is don't have to be great, or in this case, you don't have to be perfect. You have to start. That's it. I don't need 2 minutes. That's all I have to say.
No, keep going, brother. You're an orator. You're an orator. No, I mean that. And you know, anybody that's tuning in or has listened to any of the podcasts that we've shared together, oftentimes you are such a tremendous divining rod for, I tend to get quite emotional and I get very upset about things, and you oftentimes have a profound way of translating me. You you translate me, Jeremy
How ironic.
Dyer.
How ironic with this
Yeah,
accent that you're the one that needs translating.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
it's powerful, and and I don't want to switch the conversation massively, but in our the our current climate, and there's lots of stuff going on in the world right now, and there's a whole load of other topics of conversation, but it's easy to dilute stuff, and that changes our habits, it changes our actions, and it can also paralyze us and stop our
Yeah,
actions, stop our habits, or it can
yeah.
create new ones, and it can make us evaluate and step up and bring a better version of ourselves to whatever it is that's out there. And being the best version of ourselves is not diluting something.
And I'm aware that the origin story to this particular topic was, we were talking about the coronavirus and social gatherings, and we talked a lot about diluting our reality and our sort of our forgiveness with being around people. But since Tuesday morning, it's now Thursday night, I've thought a lot about, and I've been exposed to a lot of media, and I've thought a lot about how it means diluting reality means so much more than what we originally discussed. And as I said from the outset, this is one of the greatest gifts of our early morning walks, is oftentimes the thing that we're talking about ends up being something completely different, although somewhat the same. And this is my gratitude to you and to this forum and to all of you tuning in tonight, is that if we start talking to each other, I mean, you've each of you tuning in, you've got some insight into how the evolution of just two men, how we can evolve our thinking, how we can evolve our communication, how we can evolve how we interact with the world, how just two men can have these profound experiences with one another. And now, and I've said this before, imagine if 1,000,000, 1,billion, 3 billion, imagine if the planet was having these types of conversations. There's no more dilution. Anyways, I don't want to cry again, although I have a deep-seated love of crying, but for this particular forum, I don't want to cry again. So the last thing that we wanted to discuss in the rapid fire, and you know what? I'm going to get the stopwatch back.
Keep me on track. Okay.
Our children's, or perhaps more macro, children's mental health as it pertains to the quarantine.
Okay.
So 3, 2, 1. Are you going to start or me?
Sure, I'll start.
Go.
So I'm going to share a story for my 2 minutes. Yesterday evening, yesterday was we had a bit of a struggle yesterday. And on here know that I have a 3-year-old daughter, and so Harley was having a tough day. Just there was a lot of stress going on, and there was a lot of back and forth, and there's a lot of not listening, and there was a lot of then us getting frustrated as parents, and not the happiest day of the last few months. And there's been quite a lot of happy days regardless of what's going on, within our 4 walls. Anyway, so this all kind of came to a head, and then I was sitting in her bedroom last night before she went to bed, and I said, "Hey, you've mentioned she has a little best friend, and at the daycare." And I said, "You've mentioned her a lot today," and I tried not to put words in her mouth, but she'd also mentioned her teacher from school a few times as well. So I said, "You've mentioned these people a lot. Is there a reason why you've talked about them a lot today?" And all she said to me is, "I'm sad and I'm lonely."
Oh.
which obviously you can imagine. Like I'm like, was fucking heartbroken. It's emotional now just thinking about it and repeating it. But to hear a 3-year-old and then her kind of message was like, I'm alone. I'm alone. I don't have anyone. And then I know that she knows we're there and she has us there. But maybe yesterday she didn't feel like she had us there because we had a tough day. We were frustrated. And she was struggling. But when you're 3, you can't always communicate that. It took me to reflect back on the day and say to her, like, you mentioned these things. Is there something going on? Like, talk to me. And I know she's 3 and that's hard for her. But as soon as I mentioned the names and she kind of got it, she realized that it was the loneliness. And that's really what this is all about. And that obviously happened after we spoke about it. But it's just seeing how being away from belonging, connection, the other people in her life, not just her mum and her dad, which, it's nice to have us here, but and it's great to have 3 people in the household right now, but it's still not everything she needs, and it's affecting her well-being, and it's affecting the way that she can show up because she struggles to communicate. We need to do better as parents and show up better to help support her with that, but just recognizing it's the first step.
So rightfully so, many of our sort of macro, societal conversations revolve around the economic impact. Jobs have gone away, businesses are closing down. The tremendous burden on the federal budget, families that are having to learn, how to be, in my case, I've become a grade 3 math teacher all of a sudden. Many of the conversations tend to point towards, how are the adults doing during this quarantine? And I think, Gareth, what we talked a lot about is there aren't enough conversations, or at least you and I aren't aware of enough conversations that are happening as it pertains to our children. And you had some insight with Harley as to her mental health. I had said to you the other day that our son, who's 9, he's spent 2 weeks in his underwear on the sofa, doesn't want to play basketball, doesn't want to go outside, doesn't want to, do anything athletic. He's quite content to watch YouTube. So, that's on us because we're also trying to manage this. But your confession really hit home because it was my confession that elicited your confession. Is I had said that, last Saturday we went to, and you know what, hate if you want to fucking hate, but we went to a barbecue, a kid's birthday barbecue. And it's a family that lives on our street. And we've spent the past 2.5 months with this family. They're completely isolated and quarantined and blah, 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 blah. But my son played with 6 other kids in a backyard for 8 fucking hours. And I haven't seen that degree of joy and happiness in 2 months. And the next day, he woke up the next morning and he was full of piss and vinegar and ready to attack the day. And it was like he was a healthy, high-functioning, emotionally happy 9-year-old. And for a moment, my wife and I, we were beating ourselves up because did we do the right thing? Have we put ourselves or another family at risk? Are we socially responsible? But then you just see the light in your child's eyes. And this is why this conversation, this is the genesis of this conversation, is you reach a point where the mental health of the people that you love and covet, and in our case, it's our children, it it usurps the rules. And Gareth, I got to say to you, brother,